Hey guys, this is Benny Ricciardi with rotocurve.com, and I'm here with our DraftKings defense picks for week 9. There's a couple defenses that are in good spots this week, and a lot of it has to do with some of the injury news that we've seen. Last week was one of the worst weeks that I have seen in recent NFL history memory for guys getting hurt, especially some of the big players, guys that have a lot of fantasy relevance. And this week you're going to see in our DraftKings defense picks that some of the teams that we really like are in direct relation to some of these injuries that happen. So let's call up the PowerPoint slides and take a look at some of the defenses we're going to be targeting for week 9. The 4 defenses that we're really taking a look at here are the Denver Broncos, who are incredibly mispriced at only $3,000, the Atlanta Falcons at $3,400, the Cincinnati Bengals at $3,200, and the Jacksonville Jaguars at $2,800. Denver has the lowest fantasy points allowed to quarterbacks so far this season. They also have the second lowest fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. Going up against this Indianapolis Colts team that likes to throw the ball, that's not a good thing. Denver has 29 sacks and 17 takeaways in 7 games so far this season. So they're averaging over 4 sacks a game and almost 2.5 takeaways. They're averaging 16 fantasy points per game, which is just like adding a third running back into your lineups. They have only allowed 172 yards passing per game through the air, and that makes them a really, really tough matchup for this Indianapolis Colts team. We saw what they were able to do to the Green Bay Packers last week, limiting Aaron Rodgers and company to under 60 yards passing. I'm going to say that again in case you didn't hear me. They limited Aaron Rodgers and a high-powered Green Bay Packers offense to under 60 yards passing. This Denver Broncos defense is on pace to being one of the all-time greats, and for $3,000, it's an absolute joke that they're this cheap this week. The next team we're going to talk about is the Atlanta Falcons. The only thing that makes it tough for me to put the Denver Broncos in every lineup this week is that the Atlanta Falcons are facing the San Francisco 49ers, who are an absolute mess right now. Blaine Gabbert is their starting quarterback after they benched Colin Kaepernick. They have guys like Carlos Hyde, Reggie Bush, and Mike Davis, who are running backs 1, 2, and 3 on their roster that are all hurt right now. They're down to running back 4, a guy whose last name is Gaskins, and they just signed Ruben Drone off of, whatever Ruben Drone was doing right now. There's a chance that we could even see Drone get a bunch of carries in this game. That's how bad the San Francisco offense is and how bad these injuries have hurt them. Anquan Bolden is likely out this week as well, meaning that, basically Torrey Smith is the only professional NFL receiver with any, talent that they have left on this entire offense. And they just traded away Vernon Davis to the Denver Broncos, so they're going to be without their starting tight end as well. Do I even really need to go on at this point, or do you guys just realize that the Atlanta Falcons are probably the nuts for this week? The next defense we're going to talk about is the Cincinnati Bengals. They're favored by 10 at home versus the Cleveland Browns. Josh McCown is banged up and may be out. I think he had some kind of rib injury last week. He played through the pain, but you could see that he was wincing over on the sidelines. If he doesn't play this week, the Bengals may even get a chance to tee off on Johnny Football. Cincinnati is very tough against the pass, and Cleveland has basically become a team that, relies solely on the pass in the last couple weeks. McCown has actually had a very, very good season so far, but this is a really, really tough matchup for his Cleveland Browns team. This Cincinnati Bengals team has 20 sacks and 12 takeaways in 7 games, so they're averaging about 3 sacks a game and slightly less than 2 takeaways. Those are some really good numbers, especially for a team that's favored at home and is playing a offense that may be a little bit under the weather. It pains me to say this as a New York Jets fan, but the 4th defense that I'm going to be picking this week is going to be the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are on the road as underdogs against the New York Jets, but Brandon Marshall is banged up and very likely may not play. He had an MRI on his toe the other day, and they didn't release the results, which is usually not a good sign. It's very likely that Marshall could miss this game and maybe even more than just this week. Fitz and Geno both may miss this game as well. Both guys got hurt in the last game. Both guys got beat up. Fitz has a problem with his hand. Geno has a problem with his ribs. Both of these guys are questionable at best to play this weekend. If neither one of them plays, that means that Bryce Petty, the rookie QB from Baylor, may wind up starting. He has not seen any NFL action so far, and this would be basically a trial by fire for him. The Jaguars D did have 4 takeaways, 4 sacks, and 2 defensive touchdowns last week, so it's not like we haven't seen this defense make some big plays before. At only $2,800 against what is likely to be a skeleton squad for the New York Jets, I think the Jacksonville Jaguars might be a defense worth considering. Low-owned defense at the low end of the spectrum that could have some big upside for you. And those are the 4 defenses that I'm really looking at for Week 9. I do think the Denver Broncos have played so well this year that you really can't ignore them, especially at only $3,000. I'm not afraid of the fact that Andrew Luck has played a little bit better recently and that Indianapolis offense looks a little bit better, because the Green Bay Packers offense looked like they were a juggernaut, and look what Denver did to them last week. This defense is one of the all-time greats, and I definitely think it's one you should consider. The only thing I said that could keep me off of them is the fact that some of these other defenses are going up against just absolutely horrible offenses at the moment. Offenses that have so many injuries, offenses that just really don't have a whole bunch of upside. And if that's going to be the case, I definitely think that there is some opportunity with those defenses as well. I would still stick with the Broncos in cash just because I trust them and they have, basically done well for me throughout the season. But I think some of these other defenses are viable swerves in a tournament because the Broncos should be pretty highly owned. And that sums up our ideas for Week 9 defenses over on DraftKings. Thank you for joining us here at rotocurve.com. And as always, stay classy, DFS.